Welcome to another episode of the Gangs of Cinepur Podcast. This is Basundara Ghosh. I'm Vedant Pophale, and we are here to talk about a little bit about films, a little bit about Kalki, mostly spoilers, but also how the film has been crafted. And I think now the actual host Basundara can take over.
So, hello, welcome to yet another episode of Gangs of Cinepur podcast, जिसमें आज हमारे साथ गेस्ट है वेदांत, who is a mythologist and he is an expert in mythology and has been studying and taking interest in mythology and scriptures since it has been 10 years since he has been doing this, and he is also now a content and research consultant for production houses, and he helps writers and directors craft stories with accuracy and with intrigue. So that's Vedant's introduction, and as you can
Hello, hello.
understand, hi. We will be talking about Kalki 2898 AD, which is कितने साल from now?
Almost
800.
898.
Yeah. 898 minus 24 years from now. Do the math.
Do the math.
तो हम दोनों ने ये मूवी देखी कल, बिकॉज कल ही पहला रिलीज था एंड हम दोनों को काफी पसंद आया. So the reason why Vedant is my guest today is because we want to talk about the mythological aspects of Kalki and how it relates to the Mahabharata, which you must have understood by now, whether or not you have watched it, because you can understand what it deals with more or less. So, Vedant, first tell us how you liked the film and what you liked and disliked about it, and then we can carry on from there.
So I think again, it's a great combination right now because we have Cosmo Basu, who's the sci-fi part of this conversation, and Mithwala, who's the mythological part of this conversation. I tried making my background as sci-fi as it can be. That's all I know about it. I think going to Kalki came after a lot of disappointment in terms of mythology based projects. You have had your Brahmastra, which although I really appreciated as a project, it could have been more. And then you have your Adipurush, which was a complete letdown. So my expectations going into theaters was very less. I wouldn't say I did not have any. I'm always intrigued when it comes to anything related to mythology. So I've had expectations, but I tried to control them to as minimum as I could. And when I went into the film, I went first day first show, a very early morning show. So I was met with rather empty theater, and I had the opportunity to actually see the film for what it is, and I appreciated the efforts. So a lot of good VFX. That's a majority of what I would say. There's fantastic world building, something that I was expecting from Brahmastra, but Kalki has delivered it for me. And overall, it's a big, like it's a long film, but there's a lot of in it, so it needed that much time to unpack. And I think that that's something that sold me. Of course, everyone suggests that the first half is lagging a lot, but when it comes to new worlds, when it comes to world building for a new concept, I think giving that much time for the audience to at least soak themselves in is necessary. If you don't feel a closeness to your characters that you're seeing on screen, then there is no point in building that world. So I think even though it lagged, it was enough for it to build in the second half, and then of course it's going to be much better in the second part of the film as well.
Mhm. Yeah, what I felt, my problem with the first half was, I think the Prabhas's introduction scene was way too long with all the fights, and there were a lot of jokes that didn't really work well with me. I don't know if they were a bit different in the Telugu version and they were lost in translation in the Hindi version. That happened. So I watched the Hindi version because I was afraid the Telugu version wouldn't have subtitles. Uh,
Yeah.
because I heard it from some places that they don't have subtitles. So that could have been the case. And Disha Patni just disappeared in the second half. I mean, the, she was there to, take him to a place where he wanted to go. So I'm
Yeah.
not giving the spoil. This is the non-spoiler section of the talk. So I'm not telling about that instantly.
Let's let's
Yeah.
consider the audience that hasn't seen the film yet, and
Yeah.
first few minutes of it is very much spoiler free. We are discussing the craft of the film,
Mm.
and whoever is appearing in the film without giving out the spoilers. But I think whatever you feel, I might have an explanation for it that we will discuss when we come to the spoilers. There's one thing I would like to mention here. Um, it's the entrance of Prabhas, the entry scene is rather meta, because when he comes on screen, there is a text in hologram next to him which says possible rebel, and Prabhas is known as a rebel star. So
Ah, right.
him being introduced to it, possible rebel, and then even the car Bujji calling his fans as rebel fans is something very meta that Nagashwin has put
Mm.
in, and I think that was very clever of them.
Yeah,
So
that escaped
otherwise,
my
I think
mind
yeah,
at that time. Yeah.
yeah. Otherwise, I think
Okay.
yeah, the entrance is a bit long, but then again, you've had 5 entry scenes of Shah Rukh Khan in Jawan. Uh,
True.
so,
Yeah,
so I think
that's how
one
mass
one
films work. Yeah, that's true.
yeah, you've
I'm
had to
happy
have
there was a Diljit Dosanjh song in the background. That was pretty
yeah,
nice. Yeah.
that was
So you
nice.
also watched the Hindi version or you watched the Telugu
I
version?
I did watch the Hindi version. I think I've whatever I've read so far is that Telugu version subtitles have some problem in terms of
Okay.
lagging and disruption, which is why I'm waiting for at least till the weekend to catch the Telugu version again. So maybe I am no fluent in Telugu, neither do I know very basic of it, but to have that experience of watching the film in the same language as it is made is of course better. So
Hmm.
yeah, I think once the weekend is over and once they have figured the problem out, I think we can watch it. And
Yeah.
that's any different.
So one thing I noticed in this film, and I think it's also the case with other multilingual films, that some of the lip sync are in Telugu, some of the lip sync are in Hindi. So do you know why they do that? Because I mean they are making probably the Hindi speaking actors speak Hindi,
Yeah,
and
yeah. I
I
noticed
find
that
it a
too.
bit odd.
I think there is some peculiarity to it. Like it's a deliberate attempt to it because um, Ashwatthama, which is Amitabh Bachchan's character, he speaks in both Telugu and Hindi to different characters. So I think in that's sort of a clue to his immortality, his longevity, I think. And then there is uh, Saswata Chatterjee's character who also has been seen speaking in Hindi. So there's some interesting inclusion that they want to do. I'm not
Okay.
entirely sure. I think once we watch the Telugu version, then we might be able to figure it out because when you see it in Hindi, everything is Hindi. You cannot really
Mm-hmm.
distinguish which part is in
That's
Hindi.
true. Mm-hmm.
So once we watch that version, maybe there is some clue in it.
Yeah. And just from a review perspective, I think the second part really had my attention, and the whole the action sequences and the whole, so to say, the battle in the end. All those things were very well done. And as you said, the world building. Obviously, people have compared it to Mad Max and Dune and all these films, but to me, if you imagine any kind of post-apocalyptic or dystopian world, you kind of have to imagine something that is very dull and devoid of greenery, and because you have to feel that kind of hopelessness and despair which belongs to that kind of era, because
Absolutely.
So I think it happens automatically, and as far as I've read, little bit of what people talk about this Kalyug towards the end of Kalyug, that it will be devoid of fertility and all kinds of vegetation, and people will go down immoral paths, and so I think that is the kind of future they have tried to depict. So no matter in which universe you're imagining whether it is in India or abroad, it's kind of the same kind of picturization that you have, I guess, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I think when it comes to dystopia, it's always a very negative picture of what the world would end up as. Of course, there is a parallel of utopia and dystopia within the film. And as you said, they've had a in-universe explanation as to why the world looks like as it looks like. Because there is no hope left, and there is barely any what do you call it, resources that are around the earth are
Hmm.
left for the common people. So I
Right.
think that's a very basic look for any dystopian world. So comparing it to any other franchisee or any other film is quite premature in my opinion, because if the film or if any story is able to sell that same look, it doesn't matter how original it is, because at this point of time, anything you might want to do has been done and in some form or the other. So nothing original, visually at least, is left.
Hmm.
So you will always find parallels to go back to, and that happens even with the Hollywood uh,
Right.
films.
That's why there are also
So
so many different films to compare it to, because they are all showing the same kind of stuff, you know.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah.
And if you're comparing Kalki to Dune and Mad Max, which basically means Dune and Mad Max also have the same elements.
They have a lot
So
of sand.
exactly. So that shouldn't be your element of comparison at least.
Yeah. And also
But
this whole, disparity and hierarchy, that is also bound to happen. If you're imagining a dystopian world, you are not thinking of a world where there's an equality between all people and everyone is getting adequate resources. A dystopian future means that it is the worst possible situation you can imagine, where people have to fight for a single drop of water, and like hell has broken loose, basically. So that's how it is,
exactly,
right?
and
Yeah.
and even when you think in terms of story, you have to have a position that the hero or the protagonist need to go to. So there has to be something higher than the world that you're beginning the story in. That's
Hmm.
how basic story structure works. So I think that's bound to happen in any terms of dystopia, or any terms of hero's journey has to have that element.
Right. So I just want to ask you, what do you feel about the performances and the multitude of cameos, without spoiling any unexpected cameo for people yet? But
I think we can spoil the cameos, because as far as I've seen, all of the cameos are out in articles
oh,
and
is it?
news, in
Okay, okay, then
even
it's fine.
Instagram posts. If you don't want to do it, I'm very
Yeah,
much
you can
okay
skip
with
this
it.
part. No, people can skip this part. We have given a
Yeah,
disclaimer.
people, you can skip this part.
Yeah.
That would be much better, and come back to it once you watch the films.
Hmm.
Uh, I think performance wise, after a long time, I felt Prabhas shining on screen. I think it's the character that he's been playing so far, which are very very one tone
Hmm.
in terms of
This was a
their
very
stories.
interesting character, this one,
Yeah.
Bhairava.
So
Hmm.
you've had elements of fun, you've had elements of seriousness. There is some action, there is some romance. All of it is included in one character. While anything after Bahubali has been one tone, be it Raghav in Adipurush, be it his Radhesham character, be it his Saho character. Films I've not watched honestly, so I cannot even comment about the performance there. But whatever I've seen him do was rather dull in comparison to both of these films. So I think he really was able to give out more than what he what he's been doing so far. So that was really good.
Hmm.
Amitabh Bachchan for me, I think a person at the age of 81 to do what he's doing in a film, that's absolute respect from me and possibly everyone who's going to watch it on screen, because it's impossible to do. You have your De Niro's and uh, whoever there is doing films at 90s also, but they've stuck to a very dramatic performances so far. To do action at this stage with expectations of an Indian or even for that matter a Telugu style of action is
Hmm.
is crazy for someone like him.
And
So
that too with that
that was
makeup and the attire and everything which he has, right?
the whole thing is I
Like
think
Kamal
possibly
Hassan
a
also had a very unique and very challenging get up in terms of all the prosthetics and everything. I'm sure there is some CGI also that has gone into his look
yeah,
because
yeah,
he is
absolutely. I
very,
mean,
yeah, toned down. But
when it
he
comes
doesn't
to
have so much of screen time.
he doesn't he's barely on screen for 5 minutes. I think total performance is under 5 minutes. But he's done a great job, and I think he is someone to look out for in the next part, because he's going to have a massive role, and
Yeah.
uh, him against Prabhas is going to look very crazy. But coming back to CGI part of it, I think uh, general audience tend to miss a lot of normal CGI that you see. Something as basic as a cloud in the background could be CGI.
Hmm.
So we consider, okay, this element that come like seems out of place for us is CG, but so much of the world, so much of the long shots without humans and with humans have been CG'd in the film, and they have done fantastic job at it. And Amitabh's entire fight sequences, a lot of the places, Amitabh has been the character of Ashwatthama has been CG'd, which you do not realize it until you really pay attention to it. Something that
Hmm.
you've seen in Spider-Man films, where as simple as a swinging scene of a Spider-Man, that's completely CG. There is no real actor swinging to a thread or anything. Similar to that, many of those scenes have been done entirely in CG, and that's something it's fantastically done. And I think DNAG really needs the pat on the back for doing all of this.
True. Yeah. And even the battle scenes from Kurukshetra that they were showing, they created a younger version of Ashwatthama,
Yeah,
which
yeah,
was animated basically. And the other characters, when they were showing Arjun and Krishna and Karna also later on, so those were actual people. So,
exactly.
blending those things together also requires a lot of work, I think.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely true. And I think de-aging has been a sort of a challenge and a success when it comes to Indian VFX work. If you see Red Chili's de-aging, it's massive. Uh,
Hmm.
like it's done very well. DNAG
In
has
Donkey, for
done
example, uh,
in Donkey. I think a much more crazier example would be Zero's entire transformation of Shah Rukh
yeah,
Khan.
yeah. Hmm.
That's a fascinating journey to look at, and if you
Yeah, I've
ever
seen
get a chance,
the
go on YouTube.
yeah,
Yeah,
I've seen the BTS video. Yeah, yeah.
you can go and check those out. You will be astonished how much work it requires. Uh, so yeah, I think that's a good blend. I want to go to the songs, I think, because for me, as a fantasy lover, as someone who's, much more interested in the story, songs felt a little unnecessary. I wouldn't say out of place. They just felt unnecessary. They could have done without it.
Hmm.
And for me, I think if they had gotten uh, Kirani on board, that would have made a bigger
Hmm.
difference when it comes
The
to
songs of
songs.
Bahubali were very well made and well placed, I would say, in comparison.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
So I
So
think That's something that I did not really enjoy in this film, at least.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Okay, so maybe we can move to the spoilers right now
Let's
because
go.
we have pretty
I
much
think yeah.
discussed all the aspects. Yeah.
Before we move to the spoilery part, I think we can do a basic introduction of the main characters,
Hmm.
who's who, because there's literally who's who in the film. Let's go with Amitabh Bachchan's character Ashwatthama, because we have seen comments on the post that you've made, and even many comments I've seen on YouTube videos, Reddit, even Instagram for that matter. So Ashwatthama is basically Dronacharya's son, Dronacharya, who's the teacher of Kauravas and Pandavas. Along with them, Karna and Ashwatthama both learn the craft of archery, the entire um, how to battle, basically, is what they learn from Dronacharya. And Dronacharya worships Shiva. So he asks for a son with the essence of Shiva in it, in him. That is how Ashwatthama is born. And he's born while crying like a horse. Like it sounds like the neighing of the horse, which is why
That's
his
where the
name
name comes
is
from.
Ashwatthama. I think like horse is the second best animal that the ancients have compared men to. First being the bull for their strength, and horse for their ability to be in battle and run far distances. So Ashwatthama is really a praise for someone who's bellowing like a horse. So since he's an essence of Shiva, he's born with a gem in his forehead where Shiva's third eye would be, which is
Okay.
basically a representation of Shiva's third eye. And that gem protects Ashwatthama from any sort of external attack, which is animals, humans, even gods and monsters and their celestial weapons or normal weapons. And it also protects him from diseases, any internal injuries. So, all of it, and you might see it in the film also, the effect of how the gem helps Ashwatthama. So that's Ashwatthama for you. And the reason he's Chiranjeevi is actually a curse that he's been given. You will get the gist of it in the beginning of the film, but when Arjun and Ashwatthama are facing each other with Brahmastras invoked, Ashwatthama basically points the Brahmastra and fires the Brahmastra into the womb of Uttara, who's Arjuna's daughter in law, and he kills an unborn child. So, as a curse, Krishna tells him that he's going to suffer until the end of the Kali Yuga, where he'll live without regenerating, without his diseases or his wounds filling up or healing, and he will be cursed of no companionship. So he'll live alone,
Mm-hmm.
and that is how Ashwatthama is around. And people believe that if you walk across the Narmada River, which is called the Narmada Parikrama, you might be able to see him or he will visit you as a
Mm-hmm. Okay.
great devotee. And there is also a Shiva temple that he keeps on visiting, which is why in the film he's shown inside a Shiva temple.
Okay.
Coming to Bhairava and Bhairava's like name, at least, his character we'll discuss later on, but his name is a reference to Kala Bhairav, which is a god of apocalypse, sort of. He is a form of Shiva whose only purpose is destruction. There
Hmm.
are various stories about him destroying Brahma's ego. There is a story of him defeating different asuras. So he's a very fierce form of Shiva that comes out. So I think that is a reference, which is a great parallel. I think because the film is based on a avatar of Vishnu, and you have your protagonist who is balancing out with being a form of Shiva. And then comes the Sum 80, or Deepika's character, who's in the film named Sum 80 or SUM 80 as a
Yeah, then they
correct.
later also call her Sumati. Yeah.
Yeah, so that her identity as such is nothing in the beginning, and then she is given an identity based on the mechanical name. So
Hmm.
Sumati is actually the name of Kalki's mother. in the Kalki Purana, you see that Kalki will be born in the house of Vishnu Yasha, who's his father, and Sumati, who's his mother. So that is how the names come out, and these are the roles that they're playing. I think
Hmm.
there is not much information about Supreme Yaskin, which is Kamal Hassan's
Kamal
character,
Hassan. Yeah.
but I think we'll get to know it in the second half, the second part of the film.
Hmm. But as you said that let's slowly transition into spoilers now. So you said Kalki is born in the house of Vishnu Vyasa, but we don't see that kind of character in the film because Sumati is, a woman who has been impregnated through a lab experiment, right? So she is
Yeah,
not
yeah.
the child doesn't really have a father. So what is the parallel in that sense?
I think that parallel is something out of Christianity. You will,
Like the
it
Virgin
might,
Mary.
yeah, the virgin birth of Jesus.
Hmm.
Similarly, since Mary doesn't have, uh, even though she has a partner in real life, she's um, uh, like she's put in a child inside her by the God, and that is how God takes a form on earth when it comes to Jesus. Similarly, I think
Hmm.
that's a parallel that they play with. There is also a character called Maryam, which is an
Hmm.
Islamic version of Mary herself.
Played
She's
by
also
Shobhana. Yeah.
played by Shobhana, which is fantastic. I think I am seeing her on screen after Manichitra Talu, so that's a great this reaction
She
from me.
has done a lot of films in between also, but
In
yeah,
between, I
that was
think, but I
particular.
haven't been able to catch them.
Hmm.
So she's also a matriarch, something that Mary plays the role in mythology. So I think that's one reference. There is also a possibility. Now, this is purely a theory from my side that uh, all of the women are made to seed uh, by
Hmm.
the Supreme Yaskin. So I think there could be an element of Yaskin himself inside all of these women. It
Hmm.
That's one theory that I have, and it's something that I think would be really great to see that evil begets literal
Hmm.
God or literal good, and then they
Hmm.
face off each other. I think that would be something very nice to see.
Yeah. So, because you mentioned different aspects of different religion, I also noticed that they also have people of different races in the film. So there are black people, there are white people also in the
Yeah,
film. It's not just brown people. So they're literally talking of the whole world in that sense because they don't refer to it as India at any point, as far as I remember.
yeah,
They're
yeah,
talking about the world, right? So that is something I found very interesting also.
yeah. If like the dialogue very much describes Kashi being the last city on earth,
Earth,
so
yeah.
it's not really a very country related story.
Hmm.
And even when it comes to the depiction, like if you see the rebels are very much a group of different uh, colors, different like skin tone, different faith, different beliefs also. And that is something very much present in the Kalki Purana.
Hmm.
It's believed that after a while there will be no uh, difference in religion. All of the religions would come together as one, and Kalki will then bring up a new world that will start shining as all of the people being one. So I think
Hmm.
that's a little bit of addition into the film that they've done, and that would be a really great referencing.
Hmm.
And even if you see their mode of worship is very nature based, even though they have
The
stories.
tree, yeah.
Yeah, even though they have stories of, oh, there's someone, there's a Messiah coming to save us, none of the characters truly believe in it as such
Hmm.
until the natural elements start showing signs of it. You have a literal tree that's dying, but then starts sprouting as soon as
Hmm. Hmm.
Sumati is found pregnant. Or you have rain
Yeah, the
falling
rain,
on
yeah.
earth after like years and maybe decades for that matter. So all of these references are very much in tune with what is happening in today's world when it comes to global warming, pollution. So their faith is based in natural elements, but it just so happens that there is myth coming into that story as well. I think that's a
Hmm.
very good thing that they've done.
Also, you can think of it as the ancient times when religions weren't formed and people basically used to worship natural elements itself. So it's kind of coming a full circle because all the yugs are also supposed to repeat, you know. I
Exactly,
can also think in
exactly.
this direction.
At
So
the
after this
end of
Kali Yuga is
Kali Yuga,
over, there will be the what again? Satya? No. Which way?
Satya Yuga, yes,
Okay, yeah.
Satya
I
Yuga,
sometimes
yes.
forget the sequence, but yeah. That's why you are here telling people stuff, not me.
So Shambhala, as they say, or Shambhala in the Hindu scriptures, is also a very it could be a mythical place, but it's also been denoted with real places. There's literally a village called Shambhala in Uttar Pradesh, but
Hmm.
the Shambhala that is mentioned in the scripture is somewhere in the Himalayas, which is why we see people climbing mountains to reach
Hmm,
there.
hmm, hmm.
And that same Shambhala has been translated as Shambhala or Shangri-La by the Westerns to have a meaning that means utopia. So we'll get to see how that translates in the second part as well. Maybe it might
Hmm,
not play any role in it, but that's a good reference, and that's where that's the village that Kalki will be born in.
hmm, hmm.
So that's one thing,
So,
and I think
yes,
just a little bit cutting you off, but the name Kalki will come out of the uh, come out of the what do you call it? The call that they have, the call the rebels have. In Hindi, they
कल के
keep
लिए.
saying "Kal ke liye" as a form of motto that they have, and I think that's where Deepika is going to get the idea and name
But
the
how it
child as Kal.
will work out in Telugu, I don't know what they're saying or if it
Yeah,
sounds
yeah,
similar.
which is
So
also something we want to check it
people
out
who
in
know
Telugu.
Telugu can help
Yeah,
us with that,
please
I
tell us
guess.
in the comments.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that so far, what I understand, it's quite well researched from even the smaller details that you are talking about, Ashwatthama sitting in the Shiv temple and all these things. So, uh, yeah, I'm actually very excited to see what happens next because, first of all, people will be thinking who is going to be this child, which actor is going to play, similar
To
to
play,
nobody knows
yeah,
who is the father of this guy in Brahmastra. People are thinking who is that person.
absolutely.
So
I think
sequels
that
do these kind of things.
and I think that draws the audience a lot more, right? You've seen that happen in Kattappa ne Bahubali ko kyun mara,
Hmm.
and that
Question of the
really
century it
builds
was.
and it builds the hype for like to no limits for the people to really enjoy the next part. Uh, then again, there is a possibility. Now this is again a complete theory from my side, but it could be that Kalki's birth is the end of second film because
Hmm.
if we are not shown who Yaskin is, if Yaskin is not Kali, who's the main antagonist for Kalki in the
Hmm.
Puranas, then it really leaves enough empty space for Kalki to be born later once the film is over as well. And if they want to expand the cinematic universe, I think that's what they would do.
Hmm.
So the birth of Kalki and uh, that would be the end of the second part is what I feel will happen.
So tell us something about Kali, the antagonist, as in the scripture. So what are his characteristics essentially?
So so the scriptures have had personifications of the ages. You've had a personification of Satyayug, you had personification of Treta Yuga, you've had personification of Dwapara, and you've had personification of Kali. But Kali finds his mention a lot across the texts. You find him first in the Mahabharata. He's considered a Gandharva who wants to marry a very beautiful woman called Damayanti, but
Hmm.
she ends up choosing another human king called Nala.
No.
If you've
Yeah.
heard the story of Nala
Naladam and
Damayanti,
story. Yeah, yeah.
that's where the antagonizing parts of Kali come out for the first time. And
Okay.
then he starts possessing Nala, and the entire story happens. He finally gets rid of Kali, but then he starts living across the world. And then he comes across Parikshit, the child that has been killed by Ashwatthama in the womb, which takes birth anyway because of Krishna. And
Hmm.
he's now ruling as a king. And he comes across Kali troubling the cow that is the representation of earth. So Parikshit stops him and tells him that you cannot live here until I am ruling.
Hmm.
And then Kali, when he begs for mercy, Parikshit tells him that you can live in five places, which will be basically your five places of worship. That is gambling, slaughter,
Hmm.
prostitution, uh, murder or like killings, and gold,
Hmm.
which is
Like
basically
greed.
greed. Yeah. So these are the places that you can live in. And then Kali finds a way to possess Parikshit also by entering his golden crown. And that is how the ascension of Kali Yuga starts. So
Okay.
that's basically his story. And then with these five elements, now he's going to multiply these elements into rather, you know, dangerous limits, and he's going to cause havoc across the world. And that's when Kalki will need to come down on Earth to finally get rid of him.
Hmm. So I'm trying to understand, make a comparison with the Supreme asking because we don't really know much about him. So he seemed to
Yeah,
be this person who is, you know, kind of drawing energy from different sources, staying in this whatever cubicle of his, and he has all these pipes going
that
in.
also looks like a bit inside a womb, sort of.
Mm, true,
There's
true.
water, there's like wires attached to him that
Hmm.
might seem like
That's a very
umbilical
good point.
cord,
That's very,
and
yeah, and
and
he's
he's
actually drawing nutrition from all the serum that is taken out from the, the wombs of the women.
the pregnant
So
women's, yeah.
that's very interesting. So it's kind of a analogous situation compared to a womb, and then you have an actual baby being born who is supposedly the Messiah, and then there's the other person who is also very senile and very old and probably dying, but he wants to stay rejuvenated and wants to stay alive, and for this he needs to kind of steal nutrition from the
Newborns,
food of
literally.
newborns, to be honest.
Yeah,
That is very interesting. I
it's a
didn't I
great
didn't
path.
think of it in this, the tubes and umbilical cord, those kind of parallels. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and even for that matter, if you see the character of Bhairava, the major spoiler that gets revealed at the end is very much laid out to you in front of you. I'll just tell you the elements, and then you can maybe connect it to the spoiler that we're going to talk about. Bhairava is someone who's adopted. We don't know his real parents.
Hmm.
He's found to a very great man in the form of Dulkar Salman. Uh, a side note on that also, there's a basic screenwriting rule. If you don't see a character die on screen, they're not dead. So there is very much a
Hmm.
possibility of Dulkar Salman
Okay.
coming back, and I think that's something that they can really play out well with.
Fangirls like me would love that.
Fangirls like me would love that.
Yeah.
So you see, Bhairava is not he's not with his real parents. He's an adopted child. He yearns. He's in a lower strata of uh, population or society, but
Hmm.
he yearns to be in the higher strata. He he sometimes has this connection with the higher strata, not directly, but they've been kinder to him, so that is there, which is why he sides with the bad
Hmm.
guys later on. He has great love for his vehicle, and his uh, first defeat that we see on screen happens because one of his wheel is
Hmm.
unusable, and that is how you basically point him towards the reveal at the end, which is where we realize that he's actually Karna's
Karna,
essence, reincarnation. That is something that we
whatever.
don't know, because we see him being Karna for a matter of second, and then suddenly he comes back to his senses. So
Hmm.
uh,
When
that's
he holds the weapon, right?
Vijaya Dhanush,
Yeah, Vijay Dhanush. Yeah, exactly.
which is
So
basically the staff of Gandalf Bachchan in the film.
Gandalf. Yeah, that kid
Yeah,
was
I
like,
think that's
लाठी क्यों पकड़े हो? There's no need.
yeah, that's the distinction I've made. It's Gandalf Bachchan versus Voldemort Hassan. They're going to fight with each
So
other.
that's a very good. That's an interesting crossover. Also, it's a Lord of the
Yeah.
Rings Harry Potter crossover we didn't know we needed essentially. Yeah, right.
But I also have a theory for for Prabhas's character being Arjuna more than Karna, because we also see the weapon that Arjuna holds, or the bow that Arjuna holds, that is the Gandiva.
Gandhi.
It comes out very conveniently for the plot, but there is a reason I think that they've put that in there, that when he Prabhas will truly get Gandiva, he'll realize that he's actually Arjuna's essence or form in today's world, because there is enough for him to be Arjuna as well, because Arjuna is fighting Ashwatthama in the Kurukshetra war. Similarly, Prabhas Bhairava is fighting Ashwatthama in the future
Hmm.
world. Uh, there is the last battle of Kurukshetra, like the end of the battle comes from Arjuna facing Ashwatthama with both of their Brahmastras taken out as the form of warnings or threats to each other. So that is one parallel that I saw in the film as well. So I think they could do something with that. But I think
Hmm.
the reason that they chose Karna is also because Ashwatthama and on the Kaurava side they do not have many, um, let's say, a grayer character that could turn to the good side beyond Karna, which is what the
Hmm.
popular notion is. But if you read the scriptures, he's not that great a guy. But that's something that they are going to play on, and that would be
Hmm.
exciting to see how they make their story come together with that.
Hmm. But they also made a interesting cameo with Vijay Deverakonda being
Vijay
Arjun.
Devarkonda being Arjun,
Yeah. So
that
I
was
somebody told me that in the Telugu version, it's like Vijay Deverakonda was heard speaking like urban accent of the language, and so people were a bit, you know, laughing at
well,
that. Yeah. So
he's the
that is
liger of
fun
Nagpur.
for local people who understand the language. So
The
yeah.
only thing was that they could do is add a Sid Sri Ram song to it, which would make it even worse.
Right. Yeah. But we also didn't get to see Krishna's face really. It was pretty much hidden.
I
But I
think,
found out
yeah.
the actor who played it, his name is also Krishna actually. The actor's name is Krishna Kumar. I did some
Oh,
Google search.
lovely.
Yeah. I don't really know if I've seen him anywhere else, or I have not really watched his work much. But he was presented more like a silhouette, he was not really
Yeah,
shown as, but I think they tried to make him have a darker skin tone, which is actually the
yeah.
skin tone of Krishna, which I
Which is
really
actually the
liked,
skin.
which I've not seen in all these Puranic TV serials since childhood, never.
No depiction ever has been this
Yeah.
dark to the actual complexion that we know Krishna with. I think that's something that they did really well. And even with the point of being a silhouette was a great choice, because putting any face to him right now is a waste of cameo, because
Hmm.
you never
Hmm.
know in an industry like ours, we never know if the characters or the actors are going to stick to a project or the
Hmm.
story. So when then it's really the time to bring in Krishna as a character on screen, I think they'll need to choose a great actor for that. So I think
Hmm.
they've kept that mysterious for now, and any which way Krishna does not have a role to play here in the story
Yeah.
beyond introduction of Ashwatthama. So
Hmm.
that was very clever of them to do. But yeah, I agree with the fact that his complexion being darker than what we've seen on screen is a major win for uh,
Hmm.
people like me who want actual mythological representations being done on screen.
Hmm.
So
Hmm.
kudos to Nagashwin.
Yeah, and I think at this point Krishna is also more like an entity, the guiding voice in Kurukshetra. So he doesn't really need to be a face as such at the moment, I
Yeah,
think.
yeah,
So maybe in the second part we will see more of him probably. But
that
one thing
could be.
also I
Or
wanted to discuss that I wrote in the comments also about the depiction of women in this dystopian future. So
yeah,
because like someone said in the comments that they were put off by how they said the chai fertile hai and all. So this, categorization of they have this device which can tell what who is positive, negative, so which woman is fertile and which is not, and accordingly they, categorize them as the experiment and the helper, the
yeah,
other women who are going to supply food and all to the women who are the experiment. So does it paint a picture of a future where, given that all these discrepancies and inequalities in society and these things are coming about, it's like women will be seen as baby making machines without also the necessity for men to participate in the process, because as we saw, there's not even a concept of marriage that exists anymore as such,
yeah.
because that was only talked about among the rebels when Kyra and her partner, they were talking about getting married, and they had to explain it to Sumati that marriage is something like this.
Marriage is something like this. Yeah.
Yeah. So what do you think of this kind of depiction, in obviously when they want to project a future that is very negative? So people might say, okay, this is a not very good representation of women and you are sending across a wrong message, which is of course true, but if they want to show the darkest of realities, then I think this is something appropriate, similar to one movie that I remember, Matrubhumi, if you have heard of this movie.
Yes, I've
uh,
heard. I've yet to watch
yeah,
it.
I have not watched either, but it's talking about a possibility where there are no women left, so there's only one woman and everyone else is a man, and how you know society becomes if there are no women to sustain the society. So it's along those lines, but it's in a different sense, because now we want women only for the purpose of propagating the species, nothing
Procreation.
else. Yeah, you're not
Yeah.
looking at them as human beings. So what is your take on this whole thing?
I think, as you mentioned before, we are going back in times, even though we are going forward when it comes to
Because
aging.
it's circle. Yeah.
So yeah. So similar to that, even in the past, if we see ancient times, women were rather seen inferior to men. They were sort of baby making machines, for that matter. So similar stuff has happened in the future is what their depiction is. Again, a society that they've tried to build is a godless society. If you see the idols, the uh,
They say God is
murti,
banned. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Bhagwan
god is
ban
banned,
ban.
and everything is even the idols are shown uh, accidentally when the architecture is sort of destroyed or something like that. Um, but then there is no god. So similarly, this part is where we have gone back to the times where we are not talking about equality anymore. And for that matter, there is that equality of like the change in equality in terms of richer and poor also. But specifically to women, that's something that they've shown well. Uh, I have no comments beyond what the depiction should have been than what I just talked about. I think or you can talk about how the representation of the other female character has been.
Hmm.
That is something that we can take from. when it comes to how the story has been built rather than what the depiction in the story of women has been.
Hmm.
So maybe once we talk about the characters who are and unfortunately they don't have much screen time also.
There are too many
So
characters. So
there are too
yeah.
many characters.
But
I
actually,
think
there's
yeah,
a contrast. If you look at, all these women who come from Shambhala. So there's Mariam, and there's Kyra, and then there's also this woman who is helping Sumati escape through the tunnel. So
yeah,
who was a secret spy in the lab.
inside the
So
complex, yeah,
yeah. So they are very strong women, and they have a purpose, and they are trying to rebuild the world that they have lost. So they are kind of remnants of the better world that existed before all these things happened. So we can see that within the walls of the complex and whatever has been built as a result of the you know the societal gap.
yeah,
So those women are the ones who are being, how do you say, exploited, and the women outside that zone, they are flourishing, and they are trying to re-establish the world. The stronger women, in that sense, they're doing the job that they're supposed to do. So there are strong women. It's not like every woman has been, you know
yeah. So characters, female characters do have agency of their own also. Beyond, let's say, we can maybe uh, take Sumati as an exception because she's very much, um, in the crudest way possible, she's a thingamajig that all the lead characters have to protect. She doesn't have a role of her own yet,
Hmm.
but maybe in the second part when she'll gain more agency and she can. That's the hope that there is. But otherwise, also even in terms of Disha Patani's characters, Roxy, she's shown to be this woman who's surviving in a apocalyptic world, and for that matter, doing better than most of the people. I think she's also very well placed in terms of story because we might see more of her in the second part since she's inside the complex. That could be a
Hmm.
key
Hmm.
to get inside and have that major fight, whatever they will have. So each of the female characters have had a role to play. They have moved the story forward, uh, and that's I think a good thing. But that there's always hope for more, and I hope we see that in the second part as well.
Hmm. Yeah. Well, I mean, a very common criticism can be that, like you said, Deepika's character is this, like, just an entity that people are trying to protect because she's having the baby inside, which is who is supposedly going to save them, right? So
Yeah,
it's like she wouldn't have got so much of love and attention if it were not for the baby. No one would have cared for her. So that's the whole
exactly.
thing.
Yeah,
But if you see, like, even if you think of Krishna, and when he was being born to Devaki in the prison, then Devaki was in the prisons because Kans already knew that this is the child who is going to kill me, right?
yeah,
So there is a whole purpose of either protecting or destroying the mother who is going to bring this child in the earth, because that child itself is a powerful being who is going to bring about some change. So I think
change.
this is a key aspect that we have already seen in mythology before, so it's nothing
Absolutely.
new in that sense. Yeah.
And even for that matter, a very good parallel of birth of Krishna and birth of Kalki. Uh, at least what they've shown in the film. If you know the story, once Krishna is born, Vasudeva takes him to Nanda's place, that is in Gokula.
Hmm.
So he has to cross the river, and it is then that the river parts for him to make way and cross in a huge downpour, and there is flood happening,
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
and that is what has happened. And when uh, Deepika's character Sumati has to cross the complex and get out into the real world, There are
Hmm. Hmm.
fire blowers, fire blasting across, and then the fire parts for her to make way out and then uh, get into
True.
the world that is there. So that's a great parallel that they've chosen to show, I
Hmm.
think,
Hmm. Hmm.
and that it also draws heavily again. In the beginning, Amitabh's character is singing, asking Keshava to come back. So that's
True.
again a parallel that Krishna is going to come back that they've shown in the film. I think that's very beautiful.
Hmm. Yeah, I think a lot of thought has gone into the whole writing process, and you know what things to borrow from the existing stories that people know, because a lot of these things are based on imagination, but relying on the established scriptures and the stories that people know about the whatever might happen in the future. So yeah, what else do you want to add? I'm
I
thinking.
think
I
we
have
barely,
nothing. Yeah.
I think we barely spoke about the sci-fi part of it.
Hmm.
Uh, so even though, and that's I think the great thing about this film, even though there is enough sci-fi for you to enjoy, in terms of visuals, in terms of world building, it doesn't necessarily take you away from what you know
Hmm.
and the myths that it's building on, because you have the entire story happening through the myths, through the prophecies that are written in the scriptures, but it's happening in a world where it's full of sci-fi. So there is a
Hmm.
robo chasing the rebels. There are cyborg characters.
Hmm.
There
Hmm.
are there are weapons that shoot laser, and even
There's
in terms of
Buji.
weapon design, there's Budgie, who's an AI car,
Hmm.
played I think wonderfully by Kirti Suresh, and I think she's done the Hindi dubbing for that as well because I did not see
Okay.
any other name in front of her.
Hmm.
So if she's done that, then that's also a great Hindi dub that she's done. So all of this world has been built in that setting, but it's not taking you away because you are not um,
It's not
you're
overdone,
not
is what I think.
it's not overdone and you're not new to any of the concepts. So when people want to say that okay, this reminds me of something that I've seen before, I think that plays a purpose in keeping you in the film, in watching in the theater, because you are familiar with the concepts of
Hmm.
AI, robos, and cyborgs. So that allows you to believe it enough,
Hmm.
because the world there are new worlds built on the foundations of the ancient world that is Kashi. That
Yeah.
is also something beautiful that I saw, and it allows you to then immerse yourself in a world which is not quite new but also not quite similar to what we are living in today.
Hmm. Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
that's a very great aspect of sci-fi that they've added in. The action pieces, all of them dependent depended on the sci-fi. The fights always happen in around vehicles. They're happening with weapons that are
Hmm. And even these
future.
flying vehicles, they were accessible only to the higher class. So I forgot Shashwata Chatterjee's character's name actually.
His
So
name is I think Manas.
yeah, yeah. So
Manas.
he
Captain
and
Manas.
his people, they have these flying cars or flying spaceships or whatever.
Yeah. So,
And
those are very much limited to the richer society than and always the poor strata is traveling through makeshift vehicles, which is
hmm,
basically a combination of all of the different parts of different things. We see Bhairava also transforming Bujji into something more powerful with the same concept.
yeah,
So that is something that they've done really well. I think they've released a video of the action pieces. Andy
okay.
Long has been the action director for the film, and I think
Hmm,
he's done a great job because my recent complaint with the Hollywood action pieces is that there are too many cuts in one action sequence for that matter. So I
Hmm.
saw a very few cuts in comparison to Hollywood cuts. I wouldn't say they were still shots still, but there was some new style that he incorporated with the mechanics of the world, with the technology of the world that they've been showing so far. So I think that was really nice.
Hmm. Yeah, I agree. Yeah. I'm
I
just
think that's
recalling
about
all the
it.
scenes, and yeah, whatever you are saying is flashing in front of eyes. So
Yeah.
you're right.
As you said, there's so much in the film to keep
Unpack.
inside
Hmm.
you, yeah, and unpack. And when we're having a conversation, I think that also plays a part in terms of world building, right? You have to have so many things for a world to actually feel like a world.
Hmm.
The majority part of Brahmastra relied. So that's one comparison that I made with a friend. Uh, when you want to build a fantasy that is structured around an object,
Hmm.
or for that matter, one entity, as you might want to call Deepika here, it requires your characters to be very well flourished. Otherwise, the film will not work. You will not
Hmm.
uh, feel that depth. You will not feel that love or any emotion for the character while watching the film, which is what Kalki does very well, while Brahmastra sort of fails to do.
Hmm. Hmm. True. Because in Brahmastra also there were a few, additional characters who are in the training zone where, Ranveer went to train with
Yeah,
Amitabh Bachchan. But those characters really had nothing in them to even remember. So I think if you're introducing a lot of characters, there should be something in them or the other. Even in Kalki, for example, Mrunal Thakur, who appeared in the very beginning of the film. So that time, hopes were sparked that this is the particular woman that they were
true.
looking for, when it turned out to be a, false, false assumption.
Yeah.
So that kind of
I think her
gave an
character
idea to the
is
audience
also,
that what to look for, kind of. Yeah.
yeah, and her character is also a great placement in story because it's showing you the stake that these hopes are at. Had she been a woman who's actually bearing the child that is going to be the next Messiah, and she dies, then
Hmm.
all hopes are crushed. But if she's then taken by the complex, then there is also another aspect that they will have to worry about. So it places your stakes in the game, and then you are introduced to Deepika, and now anything that she does, any danger
Hmm.
that she gets in, feels very real to you. So Mrunal Thakur, although plays a very um, a small character, it plays out of very great importance in terms of audience relying on the story.
Hmm. Hmm.
So
Yeah.
putting her face to that character was more important than taking a faceless character there.
Hmm. Yeah, true. Yeah, so overall, I think things really were placed very well, and I hope the next movie will be even better because there are things to look forward to, and
There are
I'm
many things to look
excited
forward
to
to.
know more about Supreme Yaskin. And if and now that I have learned from you that there could be a comparison between the womb and his whole, wherever he stays, so that is something I found very interesting. Yeah. So.
Let's hope there is more to unpack in the second part. We are looking
Hmm.
forward to it, and I think this is a message to Nagashwin that I think we are. Yeah, this is. There's another friend of ours, Rohit, who put out a story saying, this you might want to give this film a chance because this is what a true original idea with enough sci-fi, enough mythology in it that dares to do.
Because we have
And
a treasure of stories, right, which we can use in different ways. Now, there are people who might get offended from different places, but that is a separate thing. But
that's
there
a
are stories,
completely
yeah. But if you have the creative freedom to, not obviously deliberately offend anybody, but to, make use of these stories that we have been hearing for such a long time, and make something fruitful out of it. I think that's a very good thing to do, actually.
I think, and someone as someone in the business of filmmaking, I think I can say one thing about this is, if the makers do not see hope in making these films, that if the audience is not going to support them financially, at the end of it, however much you want to deny it, this is a business and this will work on the finances. So even though you might have problems, even though you might see flaws, giving it a benefit of doubt and giving it a chance in the theaters will only ensure that more such films are made by other makers. Because
Hmm.
when you see a surge of similar genre in the theaters, that's because that genre does well financially and makers have the faith to make a film related to that genre. So I think that's a reason that you want to give in to this film, and you want to go and watch it in theaters so that you can help it financially and make other makers believe that the audience truly wants this kind of cinema for them. I think
Hmm.
that's
Yeah.
a
Yeah, I
that's a little
agree.
bit of
That's
onus
true.
on us as audience.
Hmm. True. So where I went, it was pretty houseful. It was an evening show, and I got a seat in the third row in the corner.
Wow.
Yeah,
Oh wow.
because I had not gone to watch Kalki. I had gone to watch this Malayalam movie called Ulorgu, uh,
Oh Lord.
which unfortunately I heard outside the hall that it doesn't have subtitles. So I made them call inside and ask, and they confirmed. So I thought, okay, let me not risk it. So I thought, if I've come already, let me watch something else. And it was by accident, but I'm glad I watched it. So that's why we're
That's
also
a
having
great
this
thing.
discussion. I
Yeah,
really
I
enjoyed
put
this
out
discussion also.
absolutely. It's likewise, and I'm glad to be the second guest on the GOC podcast, which I did not think would happen. I think there would be many people before me to have come on
I'm
the.
not, I'm too lazy to even approach people,
Okay,
and then I have to
then
think what to talk about. Yeah.
as an audience of GOC podcast, I am taking it on myself and telling people that we enjoy watching these podcasts. And please, whenever Basundara approaches you, please say yes, come on board, have a conversation with her, and it's going to be fantastic, as I can tell you with the first-hand experience.
Thank you. Okay. So I think we can wrap up this very insightful, very enlightening, very looking for synonyms, very interesting discussion on both the uh, aspects of the film itself and the mythology part and the science fiction part towards the end. So I hope everyone enjoyed this conversation as much as we did. And yeah, any final messages? I think you've already given.
Yeah, the final message is to subscribe to Gangs of Cinepur's
Oh,
YouTube channel. It's to share this video. It's to share the other videos that Vasundhara is going to put out, as you do with her posts. Uh, I think that's about it. Engagement, engagement, engagement. That is all we want at the end of the day. Thank
engagement,
you guys.
engagement,
Thank
engagement.
you. Only the ring is missing.
Yeah, okay. Uh, bye. मुझे नहीं पता।
Cut to black.